Hi everyone and welcome to Michael's. My name's Carly Michael and I'm hosting the lunchtime seminar this week, and it's a celebration of Save Your Photos Month. Now can everyone hear me? Is the sound okay? Great, awesome. Okay, so interestingly, and you'll see as I go through my presentation, it's quite fitting that my PowerPoint presentation keeps crashing every time I put on the slideshow, because we're going to be talking a lot about digital files and are they really an archivally sound long-term solution for your photos. So I'll just keep the PowerPoint up like this. And you're probably wondering what is Save Your Photos Month, because you've probably never heard of it before. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction about that. But I wanted to thank you for coming and also to congratulate you for being part of this, for participating inside Save Your Photos Month, because you guys now join thousands of people around the world who are eager to take steps to learn how to save and preserve your important photos. So we're not alone today. So my goal for the seminar is to raise awareness to an issue that's really important to me, something that I feel needs to be addressed on a societal level. Over the next 40 minutes, I'll be taking you on a journey with the intention to educate, motivate, and inspire you to consider your relationship with photos in a different way, and ultimately to take them from the digital realm and into the physical realm. Primarily, I'm here to start a conversation with you. So what you'll see is that there's a lot of contrast, a lot of spaces where there's no clear solution. This is really a discussion and something to start to think about, how much we value our photos and how we're going to preserve them for future generations. So who am I? My name's Carly Michael, and if you haven't met me already or realised, I'm part of the Michael family. I'm 5th generation, and we've been here 102 years. So my grandfather's grandfather started this business in 1916. Sorry. I've always been involved with photos and photography. I grew up in this store. I grew up with cameras. I grew up with photos. That's my whole life, in and out. I also studied photography at RMIT and finished that 8 years ago. I can't believe that. But in the last 6 years, I've been working here at Michael's and I've been looking after our imaging department. So I've been looking after all the film processing and all the printing services, and more recently I've become a lot more involved in the education side of our business. But I was really here since 2013, where we've really seen a resurgence of film photography. So I've very much been part of that as well. But one of my favourite parts of my job is actually working in the lab and being very much in the space of the conversion between analog to digital and digital to analog, because that's what we do there. We process film, which is its own magical state in itself, but then we usually scan that into a digital form, so from analog to digital, and we very often have digital files that we convert into prints. So we're very much in this flux between the two realities, the two spaces. And I find that really, really exciting. And really interesting space to exist. Very unique. So you might be wondering, what is Save Your Photos and Save Your Photos Month? So I think I'm the first person to be speaking about it publicly in Australia. Hopefully I'm not, but I'm the only one that I'm aware of. And it's a public service outreach campaign developed by APO, which is the Association of Personal Photo Organisers, who are based in the US. So the Association of Personal Photo Organisers. So that means there's an association of people who go into people's houses and specialise in organising people's photo collections. So I was pretty amazed when I discovered that. I was like, that's really cool. And I first discovered this organisation about 3 years ago, and at that time I knew of 2 members in the whole of Australia. They weren't in Victoria. So I've recently discovered there are a handful of people who are part of this association in Victoria. So it's starting to slowly gain some traction here in Australia and in Victoria. But what the aim is to teach people how you can preserve your irreplaceable photos, videos, documents in case of an unforeseen accident or disaster. It was actually born on the back of some natural disasters that occurred in the US. We're fortunate in Australia, we have primarily floods or fires, not so much in between. In America, very much so, they're faced with natural disasters constantly. Tornadoes, hurricanes, sorry, I'll turn that off. So the lady who founded APO, the Association of Personal Photo Organisers, Kathy Nelson, who I had the privilege of meeting recently, she watched these stories unfold and it really broke her heart, especially while watching the stories of families mourning the loss of their precious photos and their priceless family collections. And at the same time, there were all these volunteers who were trying to find ways to help to clean prints that were found, to scan those relics that they found, like basically to reunite people with their photos and rebuild their collections, because it was really obvious that that was a really devastating part of the loss that people were feeling. So in 2014, there was a photo organisers conference and there was a discussion regarding this issue, and at the conclusion they decided, what can we do to help prevent this in the future? And they created the first International Save Your Photos Day, which was on September 27th, 2014, so exactly 4 years ago. So since then, every year, we've designated the month of September as Save Your Photos Month, and the last Saturday in September is Save Your Photos Day. So I took the opportunity for our lunchtime seminar to take over for this particular seminar and celebrate Save Your Photos Month and start that conversation here in Australia. So all across the world, there are people running educational campaigns, workshops, etc., as I said, to educate people how to safeguard your photos. Now, how important are photographs to you? And I'm actually going to look for a show of hands. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to give you the 4 options first. I just want to look around the room, and you guys as well, just to see your responses. But the question is, how important are photographs to you? And the 4 answers will be not very, somewhat, very important, or extremely important. So can I see a show of hands of people who think that, for you personally, photographs are not very important? Don't be shy. Okay, I see no hands. All right, are photographs somewhat important to you? No hands again. Are they very important to you? Yeah, a couple of hands, yeah. And are they extremely important to you? Yeah, most of the room. Great, that's what I thought. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm also going to give you five responses, and it's going to be, when was the last time you printed photos? So the answers are in the last month, 1 to 6 months ago, 6 to 12 months ago, 12 to 24 months ago, or don't remember the last time I printed. Okay, so we'll start with, who has printed photos in the last month? Okay, we've got 7 or 8 people. 1 to 6 months ago, probably about the same show of hands, maybe a bit more, about 10 of you. 6 to 12 months ago, 2, yep. 12 to 24 months ago, 1, 2, yep. And don't remember the last time I printed. Wow, I'm impressed. Cool. All right. Ugh. Just dropped my papers. Well done. Okay. So that shows me that photos are quite important to this group of people who are in here, and demonstrating that by actually printing them, and we'll go through that as well. But I didn't expect that answer, so well done, guys. Okay, so for most people, photographs are extremely important. Your wedding, your first baby, your daughter's graduation day. In life, there are moments so valuable that you can't even think about losing them. Yet our relationship with the photos of these events has become so flippant, so despondent in the digital age. What we can probably agree on is that in the critical moments, that's when the true importance of photographs comes to light. So during natural disasters, people are known to take, that's the first thing they go for, their family photos. From my experience working here at the imaging counter, I've noticed a lot of, more of the people in my generation, around 30, in their 30s, they'll mainly print photos of their second kid because they realise they lost all the photos of the first child and they're frantically printing from the second one. And I just want to make a note, I don't see many people 30 and below in this room, and I think a lot of what I am going to be speaking about will be a bit targeted at the millennials who have only grown up in a digital world, just to bear in mind. So I want to just again put another question out to the audience, and this is if you want to just call out. I just want to know what photos would you be devastated to lose? Like if you were going to lose some photos, what would be the worst ones that would make you really upset? Anyone? Yeah?
Dog photos.
Your photos of your dog? Yeah? Important to you? Yeah? Anyone else?
Family photos going back a few generations.
Yeah, family photos going back a few generations, that's a good one. I heard another, yeah, at the back, Daniel?
Pictures of me and my girlfriend on travels.
Yeah, your pictures of you and your girlfriend on your travels, yeah. So really important things. Your wedding photos, yeah. I agree. And what would be holding you back from getting them organised? Like I imagine they're in lots of different places, especially recently in the digital age. They're probably going to be on hard drives, memory cards, lots of things. Yes?
Being too lazy.
Being too lazy, yeah. Yeah, see some head nodding. Yeah. Anyone else? What would stop you from being organised? Time, yeah. For me, overwhelm. Yeah, it's a pretty overwhelming task. Yep, okay. So we're all on the same page. So the problem is, actually I'm going to go back 1 second. I started speaking publicly about this topic in 2015, and at that time I was reporting that over 1.5 million new photos are shared every day on Facebook, WhatsApp and Snapchat. So 1.5 million photos every day across those 3 platforms. That was 3 years ago. These are the most recent statistics, and they're even more staggering. These statistics came from an article in Forbes magazine about how much data we are creating, and it's clear that we're drowning in photos. So 575,000 photos are uploaded to Snapchat and Instagram every minute. 300 million photos uploaded daily to Facebook. 1.2 trillion photos taken in 2017. Now, in 2015, they were predicting that there would be 1.1 trillion photos taken in 2017, so we're a bit short of the mark, but these numbers are staggering. 4.7 trillion photos are stored digitally, 1.7 trillion photos are printed. Now, would anyone want to bring out their camera roll on their phone and give me an idea of how many photos you have just sitting on your phone? Yeah? One? Okay. So you use a camera?
I use a camera.
You use a camera all the time. Nice. Yeah?
19,000.
19,000? Yeah. It's a lot. Anyone else? Cool. There's a lot of photos on our phones. Some people plug in their phones to our kiosks and 20,000 easily pop up. And that'll be from when they bought the phone, which is most likely in the last 2 years. Maybe it stores the cloud photos as well. It always is a bit complicated, not really sure what you're looking at. Does anyone relate to that experience? A few head nods? Okay. So out of the 19,000 photos. Is that what you said, 19,000? How many of these photos do you think would warrant preservation, like to keep into the future?
25%.
25%, yeah. So a significantly small amount of those photos. Would anyone else, out of your photos that you've collected, especially in the digital age, how many actually would warrant preserving till the next, for your kids to see? Generally, it's a small fraction of what's actually there. So we can all probably think about what our contribution to these statistics are as well. So my question was going to be, who has more than 2,000 photos on their phone? My next question would be, is this your only copy of your photos? Maybe they're stored on iCloud as well, not sure. But yeah, is it your only copy on your phone? If you lost your phone on the way out of here, what photos would impact you the most? These are just things for you to think about. So the digital era has created a problem which is yet to be fully addressed. That is the ephemeral or transitory nature of digital image files. And there is no 100% fail-safe storage solution, whether it's digital or whether it's in the physical reality. So according to Canon Australia, 2/3 of photographers they surveyed had lost image files due to the damage or failure of physical technology. This brings me to the digital dark age. Vint Cerf, he was one of the pioneers of the internet and literally paved the way for the World Wide Web. I'm not sure if he still is, but he was the vice president of Google Worldwide. He recently supported this very topic and coined this term, the digital dark age. And he was saying that when he was addressing the American Association of Advancement of Science in California, that he's worried that all the images and documents we've been saving on computers will eventually be lost. He fears that future generations will have little or no record of the 21st century as we enter what he describes as the digital dark age. He spoke of two threats to images which existed only as digital files. The first threat is the evolution of technology and the subsequent hardware and software that becomes obsolete. Do you guys remember floppy disks? Soon we'll be recalling USBs. Apple have taken them out of USB ports out of their computers. So photos, documents, software, video games, anything on your computer, it's just data. CERT explained, and computers use various programs or operating systems to access that data. However, as time goes on, these methods of accessing data can become and will become outmoded. Try getting at the data in a floppy disk, or nowadays even watching a VCR tape, or even loading up a 3-year-old version of Photoshop on your computer. It's virtually impossible. I see head nods. As technology advances, various methods of accessing and manipulating data get lost. Another threat, which I'm not going to go into much detail, it's a phenomenon called bit rot. And this refers to the slow deterioration in the performance and integrity of data needed to store on your needed to record storage media. So the actual data itself rots away, especially if it's not accessed regularly and given like a breath of fresh air. So it's important to save data on media that will be readable in the future, but also to use file formats that will be accessible in the future. Photographers should consider saving images in their original RAW format, if available, converting them to digital negatives, which I'll speak about in a moment, uncompressed TIFF files, or alternatives like PNG or JPEGs. Now, Adobe DNG, by design, is a file format that's meant to create a universal standard for RAW images or digital negatives. When RAW files from your camera are converted to digital negative, they're converted to a universal standard through a process that Adobe has developed to best interpret the data from your CR2 files, from your NEF files. The problem is that it's not always compatible with other software. So Capture One, for example, which is a professional software often used by professional photographers, doesn't support the Adobe standard as a camera profile and recently has stopped supporting DNG files or certain types of DNG files. Actually, technically they said they will not offer full support for this format. And many photographers prefer to capture their files and convert them to DNG files in order to safe-proof them, but that means they're locked in the Adobe ecosystem. And as we all know, in the last few years, Adobe now charges a subscription to be part of their ecosystem. So there's challenges there too. Back in 2015 as well, Leica had released their monochrome M camera, and at the time, the DNG file that was coming out of that camera, if you put it into an Apple computer and used the Photos app, it actually caused corruption of your whole computer. It was, they fixed it, I believe, pretty quickly, but it was an issue. And these things can happen. You can go out and buy the latest and greatest technology, and it's definitely not always communicated to the other manufacturers or integrated. We had Apple in the last 2 years created a new file format. I have to say I haven't heard too much about it recently, but I know that our printer in the lab couldn't read that file, and we had some issues there as well. And Apple just released it, but didn't communicate with Epson and all the other, and Canon and the major printer manufacturers to help customers like you and me integrate their photos or be able to use the new technology. So these are real issues. All right, I'm gonna go a little bit faster because time's running. Digital storage media, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray discs, M-disc. They've got a low capacity. Most computers don't even take CDs anymore. Who has a Blu-ray disc player? I don't actually know anyone who did or does. Does anyone heard of an M-disc? It's actually a disc that's made out of stone, and it actually etches the data into the disc. It's meant to last 1,000 years, the data. But to read it, you need a Blu-ray player. Hard drives, traditional hard drives usually offer a cheap capacity and they're faster to read and write than CDs, DVDs, etc. We've got flash drives, which are generally solid-state drives with no moving parts. They're generally more expensive than the optical media and traditional hard drives, so ideally they should be right for long-term storage. Well, no one really knows the truth, and the technology is still changing. And I did hear from someone with quite a bit of authority that with flash drives, you actually need to power them on every 6 months in order to keep them going long term. Putting them on a shelf and forgetting about them at 5 years will kill the hard drive. Cloud solutions like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneCloud, iCloud, they also seem to be really a popular solution. They promise to, or take the responsibility of keeping your data safe. The hard drives that it's physically stored on are geologically distant. And they're also backed up in different places on like Google sites or Amazon sites. So if there's a fire or a flood in one, it's still available from another backup. It can be really expensive to get upgraded to packages that will allow you to store all your photos. It also requires the internet, which can, especially in Australia, be unreliable, not available. My personal story is that I bought a phone a few years ago and it gave me 50 gigs of Dropbox data, and then I left that phone company. This is already maybe 7 years ago, and they took away my ability to use that 50 gigs. So all the files, I haven't actually touched that Dropbox. I'm scared to touch it. I don't know what will happen to the files. I can access the files. I definitely can't add anything to them, and it's just kind of locked, and I'm held at ransom to Dropbox because I don't want to pay. I don't feel I should have to pay. So anyway, they're all things that I'm sure we all feel about when we have to pay to have our data stored. There were also privacy issues. Condoleezza Rice, who used to be the Secretary of State of USA, she became the chairman of, she was part of the board of directors of Dropbox, and she was really criticised publicly for her views on internet surveillance when she was in office. So it was quite controversial that she's now overseeing Dropbox and potentially any privacy issues that might come up from that. So the reality is these backups or these data storage devices only really offer us temporary solutions. Data loss starts to begin at 6 months for DVDs. Hard drives are meant to start failing around 3 years. Flash drives, 5 years. And cloud, though it's convenient, you can risk losing data availability, ownership, and privacy. Now, the question is, will more family photos survive from Gran's lifetime than from yours? And I just want to acknowledge my beautiful grandmother who's sitting here today. It's her birthday, and I'm really happy that she's here. And I wanted to mention that some of the most precious, treasured family relics of ours are the photos of her family, which she managed to smuggle in her shoes when she was fleeing her home during World War II. Right? That's all we have, those little photos. Amazing. So the best backup is still a paper archive that can survive centuries of neglect. Digital archives require careful management. It is possible, you just have to be organised and strategic. And there's a whole world of, I told you, personal photo organisers, which we want to get really involved in here at Michael's. It's really important to us. But it does require careful management and planning and strategy. When you create physical photo albums or photo books, you can increase the odds that your family story and precious memories will succeed you. So prints have the best chance of standing the test of time. Prints also made using modern dry lab technology are said to have the longest archival lives. Now, more images are being captured than ever before, yet print numbers continue to drop year on year due to the adoption of digital photography and the shift towards displaying and sharing and storing your images in digital environments. Now, the irony is that we're currently creating more photographs than ever, but the value of one individual image is very, very low. Typically, an image is valuable to us in the moments that we take it, maybe within 24 hours after we take it, and then it becomes really important when you need it. But we're consuming so many images that, yeah, the value is so low. But also, we shouldn't print everything because there's just too many photos being taken as well. And it's also insane when you start printing and then you end up with piles and piles and piles of photos and have to lug them around as well. I know that from moving houses, and I've got tons of photos that I carry around with me. Okay, so these stats. It's not just affecting today's youth. 42% of people between the ages of 30 and 44 will likely look back and wonder where photos of their childhood, holiday get-togethers, relatives and friends have gone decades from now. And reportedly, 67% store their photos solely on a computer or phone. Statistics show that a staggering 53% of consumers have not printed a photo in more than 12 months. That's why I was surprised actually no one put their hand up at the end there, because it does actually buck the trend. 70% don't have photo albums and 42% no longer print photos at all. It doesn't have to be this way. We know that everything from candles, bicycles, and vinyl albums have survived the disruption caused by technological advances. We have to remember the value and importance of printed, framed, and mounted photographs in our lives and for the generations after us. Children love to see images of themselves around the house. Newlyweds have fond moments when they see their wedding photo on the mantle or walls, and our most beloved pets are sealed in time. All thanks to the power of print. So I'm old enough to remember when the only way to engage with photography was to shoot film. The only way you could see your photos was to hand the roll of film into the lab and print them. The act of shooting was the prompt to receive prints. There was no other choice. So we used to print the photos and we used to put them in the albums. That's just the way it was done. There was no other way. Prints, which is something that are tangible, something you can hold in your hand, they're no longer a consequence of pressing the shutter. The average person quickly forgets about all the files stored somewhere on a hard disk or memory card. Out of sight, out of mind. This last line I've just quoted from Kathy Nelson's book, Photo Organising Made Easy. She's the lady who created the Association of Personal Photo Organisers. And I love that line, the out of sight, out of mind, prints no longer being a consequence of pressing the shutter. It's so true. So when is a photo important nowadays? Just after it's been, I said that already, just after it's been taken and when you need it again. But the thing is, if you can't locate it, how are you going to be able to print it? That's where the photo organisation comes in. Something I realised that recently, yeah, if you can't find it, you can't print it. So I could talk for another hour to go through the process of organising your photos, but I'll save it for another day. But it is something that's really important, but it is a really daunting task. But we're on it, and we want to try and, first, the point is to raise awareness of this issue, because I really don't think it's been spoken about or addressed. And B, then we'll help you along the way start to organise your photos and manage them. But as we learn, we want to teach you guys as well, because I'm guilty as charged. I also don't print my photos. I don't organise them properly. Like it's so true for me and everyone else around me as well. I actually like to give the example of my friends who are, many of them having children at the moment. Usually on their birthdays, I offer to print 300, 400 of their kids' photos from the previous year. And so I go with a card, please give me photos, take the time, sit through the last year and give me your files. I'll put them in an album. I have one friend who will consistently give me photos, but no one else. And I make it so easy for them, it's a gift. But still, I can't manage that. So I have friends, their kids are now turning 2, 3, and they don't have photos. They have not printed their photos of their kids. We all know, and me myself, I have albums of me as a child, and it's so fun to open it up and look around at your photo. Technology is more environmentally friendly, so our prints are recyclable as well, which the wet lab prints aren't, because they've got silver inside them. The new technology is an inkjet print, essentially, very high quality. So yeah, the newer technology, I know that what we're selling, what we provide, they say it's 120 plus years. But as I said, all photos, everything is ephemeral, everything will pass anyway. It's just, you want it to, as much as you can, go down to those next generations. That's a great question. Anyway, I don't want to hold anyone up because we're now 5 minutes over time, but I'm happy to take questions, and thank you all for coming.